What's going on, guys? It's John DeYong here, and today I want to talk to you about rent vesting. It's a topic that everyone's been talking about lately, and it's mostly driven by unaffordable houses in the places that we want to live. If you're unsure what rent vesting means, essentially it's renting out a property to live in while investing in another property that you rent out. And you may be thinking, well, that seems counterintuitive, but there's plenty of reasonable explanations why someone may choose to do so. Housing affordability in our major cities is starting to get out of hand. Well, it's not just starting to get out of hand, it's always been out of hand, but to the point where double high income families are even capped out at their maximum borrow capacity in the most desired locations. And those locations provide the lifestyle that they need to accommodate for those long working hours. So instead, they decide to rent in a place near those locations and invest in a place that's in a more affordable area. A second example could be due to the cost of trading property, which is about 5% of the property price to purchase and 3% to sell. Sometimes it doesn't make sense on paper to upgrade or downgrade into a new property, especially if you're moving into a new location. With rent vesting, they can try out a new location before they actually buy in that area. Moving to a new location has become more and more common as we're seeing large numbers of interstate migration, mainly out of Sydney into Melbourne or into Brisbane. And at the forefront, this seems to be driven by those sky-high property prices in Sydney. But a new location doesn't have to be between states. It could be to lower the commute time into work, or even getting a brand new job altogether that would take an hour to commute into every day unless you moved closer. For families with the little ones, it could literally be a move down the street, as school catchment zones often change, and if a parent wants to put their kids through a specific school, they might rent somewhere in that catchment zone, even just down the street. And also, if you're loving this content, make sure you smash that like button. I've heard people talk about getting more capital growth in other areas than the areas that they want to live. And for some, this is true. If you live close to a family in the middle or outer rings of a CBD and want to stay near them, then buying in a location that has proven consistent capital growth could be a better financial decision in the long run. This is a catch-22 though. If someone was renting in an area for the lifestyle and couldn't buy in that area because it's unaffordable, that generally means that there's demand for property in that area. And if you didn't know it already, demand is one of the factors that drives the price of property, and it will continue to do so over time. So instead, they choose to invest in a more affordable location because they've heard that property investing is the way to go, and they need to get into the property ladder as quickly as possible. And this is what generally catches people out when they chase these so-called more affordable areas. Areas with cheaper property generally means there's either less demand for people to live in that area compared to something like a major city, or an oversupply of stock available. And you might not see as much capital growth as you would in areas with more demand and less supply. Of course, it's not one or the other, really expensive or dirt cheap property. There's plenty of properties in between that can suit your individual needs. I just want to draw your attention that you can actually lose in property, and the opportunity cost of making a bad investment could set you back financially for the rest of your life. Taking capital growth out of the equation, running the numbers, it actually does make sense to rent a higher end home than to buy one. Renting costs are generally determined by the building, and capital growth is generally pushed up by the land, or more accurately, the location of that land. Higher end properties usually have a higher land value, and therefore the rental costs as a percentage of the overall value of the property is often lower. So if a higher end property is somewhere that you want to live, then for cash flow reasons it may make sense. Which feeds into the whole passive income argument, but that's another whole can of worms that I won't be discussing in this video. I'll leave a link up here and in the description section below of another video that expresses my views. So up until this point, it may feel like I've been sitting in both camps. There's reasons for and against rent vesting. And because everyone's in their own individual circumstance, I wanted you to be aware of the backstory of how rent vesting has become a viable solution for many. But let's break down these camps now and go over some of the scenarios that might help you to decide whether it's right for you. Scenario 1 would be if property prices in the area that you wanted to live in are growing faster than you can save. If you're constantly trying to save for a 20% deposit in an area that keeps growing, you may never get there. The best time to buy a property is when you can afford to do so, and rent vesting allows you to get into the property ladder earlier than waiting the 10 years it now takes to save that 20% deposit. Implementing this strategy allows you to save for your dream home by utilizing the capital growth on the leveraged money growing at a faster rate than you could have saved from your income. My only concern with this approach is the cost of getting in and out of property as discussed before. So if I was in this scenario, I would only want to rent vest if I knew that I wanted to hold onto the investment property even after I purchased my dream home. And we can do this by pulling out the equity in our property through a refinance, rather than selling it to get access to that capital growth. Scenario 2 would be to have the flexibility to move around, either for work requirements or to live the lifestyle you want to live. With remote work and new technology allowing us to be more flexible with working arrangements, we may want to go and try living closer to the beaches or on a farm without having the headache of buying and selling property and all the associated costs that come with it. When renting, it's often fairly easy to upgrade or downgrade. Life circumstances do change, like when we have children and we need more bedrooms or need to be closer to family. We often don't think about these life-changing events until they happen, and they can be costly if we have to buy and sell property to account for them. So if I was in this scenario where I wasn't 100% sure where I wanted to live for the next 20 years, maybe in between jobs, following a different career path, or not settled down with a family, I would consider renting and investing in an area with a long-term sit and hold strategy. Scenario 3 would be if you seriously wanted to build your wealth through property, by investing in the best of the best areas that you're not interested in living in. Obviously, no one has a crystal ball and can predict the future, but there are areas that have consistently performed well over multiple decades. This scenario gives you the choice of where you want to invest, and you can be aggressive with your asset selection. There's also additional tax benefits with owning an investment property, but only if you have the intention to hold that asset over the long term. Although, if I did want to live in one of those locations, I personally wouldn't rent vest. Majority of wealth sits in people's principal place of residence, and the capital gains tax exemption rule is without doubt the best tax saver of them all. I think you can see the common theme here. I would only consider rent vesting if the circumstances aligned and I was buying a property with the intention to never sell it. As the old saying goes, rent money is dead money, so I would ensure that by renting it was a financially beneficial strategy. And of course, there's nothing like living in your own home. You can make it yours. You can change what you want without any issues, and you can have as many pets as you want. So if you're the type of person who enjoys having that emotional connection with where you live, then rent vesting just may not be for you. Additionally, if this is your first property purchase and it's an investment, you may be missing out on that first home loan deposit scheme, which gives you a significant step up into the property ladder. It may be a financially better alternative to buy and live in a more affordable area that has good potential for capital growth. As with any investment, make sure that you crunch the numbers. There's plenty to consider. Interest rates, rental yields, tax deductions, capital growth, capital gains tax, the first home loan deposit scheme, that's just to name a few, but if it stacks up on paper, it may be a viable alternative. Are you considering rent vesting? I want to know which one of these scenarios you fit under, or if you've got another scenario altogether, leave it down in the comment section below. As always, seek your own professional financial, legal, taxation and property investing advice for your current situation. These videos are just my opinion and are general in nature and should never be considered as personal advice. If you're keen for more content, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss a video. And until next time, happy house hunting.